Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Green. I'm the pastor of Church of the Good Shepherd in Nashua, New Hampshire, and this is our gospel reflection for the Thursday after Lent 4. Today's gospel is from John chapter 5, verses 30 to 47. Let's take a look together. Jesus said, "I can do nothing on my own authority. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just because I seek not my own, but the will of him who sent me. If I bear witness to myself, my testimony is not true. There is another who bears witness to me, and I know that the testimony which he bears to me is true. You sent to John, and he has borne witness to the truth. Not that the testimony which I receive is from man, but I say this that you may be saved. He was a burning and shining lamp, and you were willing to rejoice for a while in his light. But the testimony which I have is greater than that of John. For the works which the Father has granted me to accomplish, these very works which I am doing, bear me witness that the Father has sent me. And the Father who sent me has himself borne witness to me. His voice you have never heard, and his form you have never seen. And you do not have his word abiding in you, for you do not believe him whom he has sent. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life, and it is they that bear witness to me. Yet you refuse to come to me that you may have life. I do not receive glory from men, but I know that you have not the love of God within you. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe, who receive glory from one another, and do not seek the glory that comes from the only God? Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. It is Moses who accuses you, on whom you have set your hope. If you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words?" That gospel passage is full of words like witness and testimony. And it seems to be Jesus arguing with some very litigious people about how reports of him and how his own reports are to be counted as trustworthy. It should sound pretty familiar to us, who for days and years, in many ways, have been struggling with this question of testimony. Whose testimony to believe? Uh, who's giving us the real news? Who's giving us fake news? What is it that we should be looking for? We're getting conflicting reports all the time about coronavirus and COVID-19 in particular. Is it something that will pass? Is it something that we need to hunker down for? What's the best way through it? All of this conversation in the gospel, I hope, gives us pause to consider the kind of testimony that is around us all the time, to God's greatness, God's goodness, love, and grace. That is so omnipresent, so accessible everywhere, that very often we tend to ignore it because we take it for granted. What we see, what we tend to focus on, is that which changes most from day to day. That's why we call it news. But it's difficult to read the news or to see what's going on in the world as a Christian without thinking of the idea that here is Jesus suffering again, being crucified again in our own generation, in the poor and the outcast, the sick, the lonely, them that have no helper. And yet, at the same time, for every piece of news that might tempt us to desperation or to give up hope, there are countless bits of testimony, countless points of light around us that remind us of all of the good things that God is actively doing, even in desperate situations such as our own current one. We see families coming together and reconciling and sharing the same space. We see people who are giving generously of their time and of their possessions to help those that don't have what they need. We see people who are reaching out in countless new ways to connect with people through loneliness, through isolation, and through separation. And on a bigger scale, we see communities coming together in new and innovative and unheard of ways to share fellowship and encourage one another in this time of isolation. But perhaps the greatest miracle of all is this notion that our society, the whole world, the whole human family has gathered together to take on a project that is in the service of those who are most vulnerable, most likely to suffer at the hands of this virus. And to me, that is a miracle of compassion which keeps on unfolding day by day. Just as Jesus is still present in the lives of those who are suffering, and we can witness his crucifixion without having to look too far in the world around us, so is Jesus present with us as we seek to continue his mission, to carry on his words of hope, healing, compassion, and mercy. Strengthened by our prayer, our common fellowship, and our dependence on the God who brings all things into being, we can do our part as part of his body, as part of his family, to make sure that there is more witness to God's love and grace and mercy in this time of desperation for anybody who would look for it. Then there is testimony to the denial of God's grace or of despair or the loss of hope. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.